Hey, who do you think you are anyway? Man, what a great question. Who do you think you are? It is so important for us to think about ourselves the way God thinks about us, to have the image in our mind about ourselves that God has about us. You know, and unfortunately, most people get their self-image from the world around them. And interestingly enough, it's not as if the world needed help. I mean, the world's going to beat you down every time. But what's astounding too is that often there are really good-meaning people, well-meaning people, people who care for you, people who love you, who, without even meaning to, tell you that you're less than who you are. Some of those well-meaning people say that because they know how much failure hurts. And one of the things about thinking big is that you'll probably fail. That just goes with the territory. Sure, you think, I'm going to do this great thing. I mean, everybody knows the example of Thomas Edison, and I forget where he tried thousands of times to have a light bulb and failed all the time, except for the last. The last time he tried, poof, because once he got it, he got it. But he thought big. But it meant he failed. And, you know, you can just see some well-meaning person come along and say, oh, Mr. Edison, you know, I know this is such a good idea, but, you know, you seem to be so discouraged at times. Maybe you should back your vision down. You know, you and I, it's so important. Proverbs says we've got to guard our heart. And it's so important for you and I to think the thoughts about us that God thinks. Absolutely, that's huge. That means think big. That means sometimes we're going to fail, so we ought to be prepared for it. It's important that we do some kind of mental inventory so that we know how that we think about ourselves. You know, at this time, if you wanted to do an interesting exercise, you could pause the teaching, get out a piece of paper, and you'd have to do this quickly. This is not something you want to mull over, because this is stuff that just comes up within you. Write down, how do I think about myself? Just grab a piece of paper, pause the tape, write down quickly, you know, this is what I think about myself. This is, am I thinking that I'm a failure? Am I thinking that I'm not bold enough? Are all the thoughts that I think about myself, are all of them the ways I can improve, or the areas where I fail, or something like that, or where I'm not good enough, or at least in the mix, is there these great thoughts about God? You know, here's what Ephesians says. Ephesians says that you and I are to be imitators of God. Absolutely. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 1, therefore be imitators of God as beloved children, and walk in love, just as Christ also loved us and gave himself up for us as an offering and a sacrifice to God for a sweet-smelling fragrance. You know how much we're worth? How much is anything worth? Something's worth as much as someone's willing to pay for it. God was willing to pay for us with the life of his Son. How much are we worth? We're worth a lot. And we're to be imitators of God. So when we're hearing a voice in our head telling us who we are, who do you think you are? I know who I am. I'm a child of God. I'm an ambassador for Christ. I'm a fellow worker with God. You know, if those thoughts come up, then you're being an imitator of God, because that's what God is thinking. Absolutely. You know, let's just run through some verses. I mean, really, if we're going to find out what God thinks about us, let's go to the Bible and run through some verses. 1 John chapter 3, verse 1. See what kind of love the Father has given to us, that we should be called children of God, and that is what we are. What's God think about us? He thinks we're his children, and we should think that way too. 1 John 4:4. Greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world. What do I think about myself? I think that I've got power and authority in the world that I can use, because greater is he that's in me than he that's in the world. I think that about myself. We should think these things about ourselves. Philippians 4:13. I have strength for all situations in union with him who empowers me. I'm in union with Christ. I have strength for all situations. That's the way we should be thinking. That I can handle the stuff comes up in life. Stuff comes up in life. Yuck. Okay, but what are we thinking? I can handle this. I have strength for all situations. Why? I'm in union with Christ, and he strengthens me. Absolutely. I love what Jesus said, Matthew 5:14. You are the light of the world. There's a lot of times where I think, gosh, if I was there with Christ, I'd probably argue with him. No, I'm not feeling like a light right now. No, I don't think I'm. Jesus Christ said, you are the light of the world. Who are we to say that we're not the light of the world? Back to, who do you think you are? I know who I am. I'm a light of the world. So you and I have to get to the point that we believe what the Bible says about us. And if the Bible says you're a light of the world, guess what? You are. You're a light of the world. Absolutely. Romans 8:37. We are more than conquerors through him who loved us. We are more than conquerors through him who loved us. We can think this about ourselves. Yeah, are there times that we lose a battle here or there? Yes, we lose a skirmish here or there, but we never lose the war. And what's more, we've read the end of the book. We know who wins. We're going to come back down as the army with Christ, as the armies of Christ. We're going to fight the battle of Armageddon. We're going to win. We're going to conquer the earth. We're more than conquerors. You can't lose your salvation. You're a child of God. You're more than a conqueror. See, when you're writing, oh, what am I thinking about myself? I'm more than a conqueror. Why? Through Christ. Absolutely, absolutely. Through him who loved us. 2 Corinthians 5:20. We are ambassadors on behalf of Christ. See, the question is not, are you or are you not an ambassador? What should we be thinking about ourselves? I'm an ambassador for Christ. Because we are. We represent Christ. What a high and holy privilege. That's who we are. 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 9. For we are God's fellow workers. That's amazing. I mean, is it true that back in the beginning, before God created anything, he could have done everything by himself? Sure. Yeah, he's God. He could have done it all by himself. But somewhere he said, I'd rather have help. Have you ever had a job that you could do by yourself, but you just enjoy it when somebody helps? Okay, there's God. God could have done everything by himself. But what's he do? He says, I'm gonna create some fellow workers. And he created us. And we're God's fellow workers. And then he says so. 1 Corinthians 3:9. For we are God's fellow workers. You know what we should be thinking of ourselves? I am worthy and sufficient and capable of being God's fellow workers. Because we are. I mean, you might say, well, God doesn't need me. Let's not contradict God. Let's get to where we're thinking about ourselves what God is thinking about us. Absolutely, we're God's fellow workers. 2 Corinthians chapter 2, chapter 3 rather. 2 Corinthians 3, I'm going to start in verse 2, go to verse 6, but I'm going to abridge this because that's a long section. So, in 2 Corinthians 3:2, you are our letter, known and read by everyone. It's plain that you're a letter from Christ. Moreover, this is the confidence we have in God through Christ, not that we're sufficient in ourselves to consider anything as coming from ourselves, but our sufficiency is from God, who also has made us sufficient. So when I'm thinking and imitating God and thinking the thoughts of God about myself, what am I thinking? I'm a letter. I'm God's letter to the world. And furthermore, I'm sufficient. That's what he says. Absolutely. Okay, yeah. All right. We fail. We come up short. We make mistakes. We sin. We're human. But here's what's not happening. God's up in heaven. He looks down and goes, wait a minute. Those people are failing. Those people are coming up short. Those people are sinning. They're human. Oh my gosh, I made a mistake. All those good things I said about them, I take them back. I'm taking back all those good things. They're not my ambassadors. They're not my fellow workers. They're not my children. God isn't saying that. He's not up there in heaven surprised that we're human, surprised that we're making mistakes, surprised that we're falling short sometimes. He's not surprised by that. You know what he is? He's like, look at those people down there and how hard they are trying and how they're thinking about themselves, what I think about them. And I'm proud and blessed to have them as my children. Absolutely. God isn't surprised that we make mistakes, and he's not sorry that he made us his family. He's proud that we are who we are and that we're doing what we're doing. Absolutely. When God makes us his fellow workers, he needs us. He wants us to work with him, and he needs us to do the work that he's assigned us to do. Absolutely. You know, yeah, we're human, but we can do what God says we can do. We're human, but we can do the job that God assigned for us. Who do you think you are? It's a great question. Please, who do you think you are? You're an ambassador. You're a child of God. You're more than a conqueror. You've got someone in you that's greater than in the world. You're a letter written from Christ. You're God's fellow workers. He needs you. Who do you think you are? You're a child of God. Go get him. Thanks so much for watching this video. Hope you found it helpful and a blessing. If you would like to contribute to the effort of producing these videos and having them go out all over the world, please consider donating at stfonline.org/donate. And while you're thinking about things, don't forget to push the subscribe button at the bottom of the screen so you get notified of future videos. God bless.